Alright, so today I'm installing a Koyorad into the S2. Basically, I've noticed there's been a bit of a leak, a coolant leak, a very minor one. I thought it was the reservoir at first, but I replaced it and it's still leaking. So, I mean, I kind of cleaned it, but there's some leakage here on the neck. And apparently that's a pretty common area for this OEM radiator to leak at. But sometimes you can see like blue streaks of coolant leaking down into the engine bay here. You can see little specks here and there, right there. The Koyorad is made out of aluminum, so it's a bit stronger and it lasts a bit longer. So if you are installing the Koyorad, you do also need a spill-free funnel kit. And you're going to need a combination of these adapters, because these adapters actually don't fit. You actually have to use a combination of it. So I'll show that later in the video. And obviously you need your coolant bottles here. I guess I'll just kind of go over the install. First things first, I got to actually remove the intake. So before I actually uninstall the intake, you want to put your heat to max, fan at 1, and I think you want this setting here. So basically what this does is it opens up the coolant valve or whatever, and it allows more coolant to flow through. So these are the settings you need. Alright, so the intake has been removed. You can start flushing out the coolant here. So first things first, you can go ahead and remove the cap. Let's go ahead and do that. Make sure your car is cold. The car has to be cold. Otherwise, this can end very badly. Whoops. Alright, so go ahead and open this bleeder valve here. Alright, so next, we're going to head under the car. Get yourself a bucket. And then from the top of the car, you can actually just crack the valve here. Okay, you might have to get yourself a pair of pliers here to crack this open. And then just slowly release it until coolant starts coming out. Just like that. So we'll let that drain for apparently about an hour or so. So while that's draining, might as well remove the coolant overflow tank. It's pretty simple, just twist off the tube here and then lift up. Alright, so the coolant is done draining. So you can tell it's done draining because there should be at least 2 gallons worth of liquid there, or at least 4 liters of liquid. Alright, so now it's just a matter of removing some hoses and some wiring. First we'll start by removing this clamp here. Alright, so that's loose. Alright, so just put this coolant hose out of the way. So now we'll go ahead and loosen this clamp here at the bottom. That one's going to be a bit harder to get to. We'll go underneath the car and get it. Alright, so get yourself a set of angled needle nose pliers. I found that was the easiest way of getting to this clip. I unhooked it, and now we just gotta pull this hose off here. Alright, so I'm having a hard time getting this lower hose out, so I'm just gonna remove the under tray here. Just a couple of plastic clips they have to remove, and that should give me more access. Alright, so I removed the under tray here. Now I have more access to get this hose off. I forgot to mention, but there's also 2 clips that connect here and here. So while you're down here, you might as well also disconnect this connector here. All right, go ahead and disconnect this connector and also this connector. All right, so lastly, just remove these two brackets here, one here, and then you can pop out the old radiator. All right, here's the new radiator. It looks good. So one thing that some people sometimes forget is you actually need a Koyorad or spoon radiator cap to fit this. The OEM cap does not fit. So now we'll go ahead and remove these fans and put it onto the Koyorad. Alright, so we just got to take these 10mm bolts out right there and there. And then the fan should just pop right out. You also have to remove these rubber pads here and place them onto the bottom of the Koyorad. And yeah, install the fans pretty straightforward. Just use these bolts that Koyorad provided, and yeah, bolt it all in. So you need a 24mm deep socket to remove this. All right, so torque the sensor down to 17 foot-pounds. So this fitting here was a bit loose, so I just tightened it up. Now it's good. All right, so everything has been attached. So now we just have to reinstall it back into the car. All right, so start by reinstalling the brackets here. Torque it down to 8.7 foot-pounds. All right, so these are torqued down. Next, we just got to connect these connectors back. One here, and then the one at the very bottom there. All right, so now we just have to reinstall the upper radiator hose and the lower radiator hose. Those pretty straightforward. I think we just got to slide it right in. Don't forget to put your clamps back in. But yeah, we're basically done with the Koyorad install. You got to reinstall your intake first, and then we'll pour some coolant inside and do the bleeding process. Oh, also don't forget to reinstall your coolant reservoir. All right, so the intake has been reinstalled. If you have a K&N intake, since this radiator is a lot thicker, this gets pushed back more, so you're gonna have a hard time getting the bolts back in. So just play around with it. I found taking this whole bracket off, installing that bottom bolt first and then reinstalling this bracket helped a lot. And if you remove that bottom one there, that one's a bit of a pain to get to, but it's only really an issue if you have the K&N intake. But yeah, everything's bolted back up. All the hoses are back in, and yep, clamps are in. The only thing left is to fill this radiator with coolant, and then we'll do the bleeding procedure. Okay, so if you're using the EP Auto spill-free funnel kit, you're going to have to use a combination of the funnels or the adapters. So the first things first, get the rubber washer from the red one and push it in. You might have to use a prying tool to get it in nice and flush. Then you're going to use the blue adapter, pop that on. And lastly, the green cap. Alright, so that's nice and snug. That's not going anywhere. Okay, so make sure your funnel is free of any debris. You don't want anything going inside of your radiator, so yep, and just plop it on. Make sure it's in there good. Alright, so you also want to get yourself a clear tube, and just place this tube on top of the bleeder valve here. Okay, so the funnel has been attached. This hose has also been attached onto the bleeder valve here. So now we'll start filling the radiator with coolant, and we know the radiator is full with coolant when we start to see coolant in this clear tube. All right, so I filled the radiator with the coolant, and the bleeder valve had coolant coming out of it, so that's how we know this is full. So now we're gonna fill this funnel halfway with coolant and turn on the car, and yeah, start the bleeding process. All right, so head to the car and turn it on. And okay, so you're gonna want to put the fan on high and the heat at max. All right, so this process is gonna take about 30 minutes. We gotta wait for the fans to turn on, and then we'll start to see bubbles coming out of here. All right, so the coolant has finally been bled. You definitely should rev the car to 3000. That helps push out the air also. I didn't do that at first, so I was sitting here for like 40 minutes and there was still bubbles and whatnot, but I then held it at 3000 RPMs and a bunch of bubbles came out. So yeah, so make sure you do that. And then yeah, so there's no bubbles in here, and then also the vents are blowing extremely hot air. All right, so that's basically it for the install. I went for a drive and the car is not overheating, so there's no more bubbles or anything. Car drives great. Yeah, honestly, I think everything looks pretty good. All right, so just go for a drive around the neighborhood. Stay close to home. Just make sure your car is not overheating. And yeah, and then check for leaks afterwards. You want to take a look at the lower and upper radiator hose. You also want to take a look at the coolant sensor, the lower coolant sensor. All right, so yeah, just keep an eye on those hoses and the sensor. Make sure there's no leaks, and just make sure your coolant temperature doesn't go past 3 bars for AP1. But yeah, that's basically it for the install. Thanks for watching.